For my capstone project, I picked Alexander Hamilton and how he shaped the modern day government. The main points that I will be talking about during this presentation is point 1, the Revolutionary War, point 2, banks in the United States, 3, his works in office. For the Revolutionary War, I will specifically talk about his time as a soldier and his work during that time. For the banks, I will talk about how he shaped the modern day banking system to back the economy of the government and how today it currently runs very similarly to how it was back in the day. Number 3, I will be talking about his works in office, specifically his time as Secretary of Treasury under President George Washington. The primary sources that I used are the Federalist Papers, in which Hamilton, Madison, and Jay wrote. Hamilton wrote 51 of, I believe, the 60-ish that they had. And the Federalist Papers shaped today's government and how it affects how our government is run and driven today in society. Without Hamilton's 51 papers that he wrote, we would not have our government that we do have today. Also, they talk about, I have a source on his works in the Library of Congress. With the Library of Congress, it was all of his papers during his time as a treasurer with President George Washington and all the letters and petitions that he signed. For the New York Historical Society works of Hamilton, that is every single letter, information, history, personal history that Hamilton has ever had in his life. It is all stored there at the New York Historical Society works of Hamilton. The secondary sources that I used was a crash course video on the post-Revolutionary War. This wasn't just on Hamilton, but it also went in depth on James Madison as well and how the government was shaped. Also, there's an article about how Hamilton used his power to persuade the nation to become stronger together by creating a more centralized government. This basically talks about him during his 51 papers and what he wrote in order to what he think would be what America needed as a government at the time, because the states were very divided at the time that Hamilton was writing the papers, and he wanted to have a government based on democracy and being together. More secondary sources are the academic journal that talks about how the foundation of the economy Hamilton set up evolved into the modern day. Again, this is a journal that talks about how Hamilton set up the modern day banking system and how today that we really have one of the better, if not best, banking systems in the world, and that is largely due to Hamilton. Also, this is a textbook about Hamilton shaped modern day currency, specifically the dollar. And this is Alexander's Britannic page outlining his life and his struggles in politics. This is a very eye-opening article, because it is very different from the what's known as the musical Hamilton, and how the musical is very dramatized compared to what his actual struggles were like. The sub-arguments I have was that Hamilton was not only important in shaping our country, he was a predominant driving force in getting soldiers to fight for us and stand with the underdog colonists. Also, although Hamilton's life was glamorized by Broadway, they skipped over some of his most important moments politically and historically, such as setting up banks and budgeting for a nation in war debt to each other and other countries. So this shows that Hamilton was a very prominent leader in getting the soldiers to want a centralized government. Also, this information and this argument shows that Hamilton's life is not all glamorized as it was in the musical. So what? Our future. To understand our current financial and political state, we must understand it at its foundation and understand the intended purpose. Understanding why. Many things in the U.S. government system have some tone of outdated or confusing message, such as our national budget plan, but we can clearly see that the framers had a plan rooted in hope for a better future, and that is the spirit we need to take with us. Copy. By looking at our foundation, we can look for solutions to our modern day problems. And then history. Learning about our history is important for many reasons. First, we do not repeat the past, and second, so we can gather information about how to move forward, and with so much rich knowledge and advice Hamilton gave us both. In the end, Hamilton was a very prominent figure for the United States of America and its history, and I believe that today is very important to still learn about him. In conclusion, what did I learn? One interesting that I learned was that Hamilton's life was much more than what the Broadway show depicts, and I truly believe that without him, our country may not have survived financially. And for me going forward. Going forward, I would not only have a strong base of knowledge about the powers of government and how they came to be, but also how they operate, which is helpful in understanding who I may want to vote for and give that power to. My favorite part of the project was getting to know a little deeper about the life of a historical figure, Hamilton, that I already knew somewhat about and was interested in. My least favorite. My least favorite thing was learning the historical inaccuracies I had accumulated within the story of the foundation of the country, specifically his rivalry with Burr being dramatized. Thank you for watching my presentation on Hamilton. The end.